Hello and welcome to another replica reviews video. Now today we've got the tabletop review of the Webley Mark 6 service revolver. Now I was lucky enough to get my hands on the prototype, the first kind of production one that came off the line a couple of months ago back during the summer, and managed to actually get hands on with this, and then ever since I've been waiting for it to come out. Now it really was a bit of a breath of fresh air. A lot of revolvers and a lot of guns have just been kind of reworkings and regenerations of existing designs, whereas the Webley has been built pretty much from the ground up. Now we'll start off by looking at the box, everything. It does come in this kind of old school looking-esque box. Pretty standard, but they've gone for a kind of an aged design. And as you can see on the front, just a couple of key features. It's based off the original blueprints, which I'll go on to explain later on. It's got the original 1915 markings on it, which rather than just being sort of stickers or anything, they're actually etched in, which is quite nice. They're not going to go anywhere. It's field strippable. It's got a 6-inch barrel, which you know, comparable to Dan Wesson's, etc. And it uses 6 shots. Again, we'll go into that in a little bit more detail. Now, opening up the box, first thing you notice is the little user manual, and it's got a little horse-drawn or horse-bound officer on top holding his revolver up in the air. I'm not sure if it's coming out on the camera. Fortunately, the light's a little bit funny. And then obviously opening this up, it's just got the usual things really. Oh, trying to do this one-handed. Sort of basic, what the different parts are, safety, how to load, etc, etc. Which, you know, is all very useful to know, but I imagine most people buying this pistol are probably collectors anyway, so you're probably more than aware on how to load it. Now, moving the user manual out of the way, now this was a really neat feature, and I was quite impressed when they actually included this. Now this is a copy or a reproduction of the original Small Arms training pamphlet. As you can see, it's volume 1, pamphlet number 11, and this is obviously on the pistol. Now it comes from 1937, so obviously the revolver had been in service for quite a while, but they've really beautifully reproduced all of the inside. You've even got the contents, and my favourite section here in the middle is how an officer should be stood with his revolver, either in the rest position that you see on the right, or the drawn position with the revolver open. It's just little things like this that it kind of sets this one out from the rest really. It's just the attention to detail that Webley have actually gone into, I find astonishing. And obviously it even goes into, you know, you've got to have the pistol facing 45 degrees from your body. You know, it's some really in-depth stuff. I'm not sure how much of it is practical in the battlefield, as I'm sure anybody that's been in the theatre of war will understand. Protocol kind of goes slightly out the window when it comes to this kind of thing. You know, you're not going to get your set square out and measure 45 degrees, that's for sure. And then a few other bits, obviously if you're on horseback, how to kind of conduct yourself as well in a nice, safe manner. It's almost worth adding, and it just really was an interesting little thing. You've even got a map here of a practice squad from when you're moving around on a drill ground or whatever. But anyway, we'll put this to one side because, quite frankly, the only thing I imagine most people want to see is the revolver, which, as you can see in all of its glory here, is a fine looking bit of kit. So what I'm going to quickly do is just pause the camera, get it all out of the packaging, hopefully try and zoom in a little bit to get you a slightly better view, and we'll carry on with the review. Okay, so here we have the revolver in all of its glory. Now to start off with, we'll just give you a quick run through of the revolver. Apart from the grips, everything you see here is metal. It really is quite a weighty revolver. Now all of the frame here is metal, cylinder's metal, barrel is metal, all the extra bits and pieces are as well. You can see it's very minimal. We've still got the sticker on here, just says energy of a maximum 3 joules. That'll be coming off shortly. Even the tab on the bottom here. Now usually a lot of companies they sort of, I'm not really sure skimp's the right word, but they usually just make these out of plastic. Webley have very kindly made this out of metal, which will make it last an awful lot longer, and also make it better suited for anybody that wants to put a lanyard. Now I know a couple of people that have bought these revolvers have actually managed to find replicas or kind of used leather work, so holsters and that kind of thing for these revolvers, and actually using them more as showpieces. So the fact that you can put a lanyard on the bottom of here without having to worry about breaking it as easily is absolutely spot on. Flipping the revolver over, they've also kept sort of excess markings to an absolute minimum. As you can see, there's no obnoxious warning signs down the side telling you that it's an air weapon and to be safe, etc. The only kind of giveaway really here is just the fact that it's got 177 cal brackets, 4.5mm BB, and a tiny little F there for the German market. Now, for me, that was the only kind of giveaway that this is actually an air gun as such. But you know, it's got to be there. I'm sure there's legal reasons for it. And also, you've got a little serial number here as well. Now, as far as I'm aware, the serial number is unique to each revolver as well. So, in theory, you should never actually have the same revolver. Now, whilst we're on this side of the gun, I will start off with my only gripe that I found so far anyway. Now, this is the safety catch. Now, whilst it's quite small and it's out of the way, and it's very easy to use, so as far as the safety catch goes, it's very convenient. The original didn't have a safety catch, so I'm not entirely sure why the replica needed one. Now, luckily, because it is so discreet, it doesn't really detract from the revolver, but any eagle-eyed sort of collector will soon pick up on it. I know a few people that I've seen with them, the first thing they pick up on is this safety catch, unfortunately. But flipping it over, you can see, you know, there's nothing too untoward on this side. You can take this little screw out and then take it down, but unfortunately we won't be doing that in this video, as it's only really the cylinder that comes out, so there's not too much to have a look at. Okay, so I've just quickly zoomed it in, as I just wanted to show off some of the decals. Now, as I said earlier, these are the original 1915 decals. Got .455, which is obviously the original calibre of the revolver. Mark 6 along the top, just where you can you know, identify what revolver it is. And then also just the little Webley Patents 1915 markings. Now, these aren't just cheap decals, they're almost being pressed or etched or something into the frame, and to be completely honest, I really like it. They haven't highlighted them, they've just left them dull in the background, and I really, you know, I really appreciate this, as sometimes the markings can be a little bit over the top. Apart from that, it's absolutely brilliant. As I said a minute ago, the only kind of giveaway on this side is the fact that it has this little section here, but you know, it doesn't really matter, and obviously the safety catch, which as it goes is really easy to use. Now, it is quite rough on the finger, so I'm not entirely sure how kind of good it's going to be in the long run, but what we'll quickly do is just leave that on safe, just so nobody gets concerned. Now, what we're going to quickly do is just go out and I'll demonstrate how the action works, how to unload the gun, etc. Okay, so as I said at the start of the video, it's a 6-shot revolver. Now, the way that you get to this one, unlike the Dan Westons, we've got a little toggle, is you just simply push forward on here, move this lever forward, and then the revolver opens up like so. Now, one thing I really do love is when you open it up, it actually presents the shells out, which I think is a really neat feature. And then when it goes to a certain point, it just locks itself back down. So we'll do that again just to show everybody kind of what happens. Goes to a certain point, so when it's perfectly 90 degrees, they lock back in. Now, the shells are really similar. For anybody that's kind of knows their revolvers, you'll recognise this pretty much as a Dan Weston shell. Slight issue, obviously, because this wasn't made by ASG, the shells don't fit. So if you've got Webley service revolver, only the Webley shells will fit, and if you've got the Dan Weston, only they will fit, or at least that's the best of my knowledge anyway. Loading it up is really simple. Simply push the shells in like so, get them flat back in, and then just close up the revolver. So that really is as easy as that, really. The trigger is by far one of the nicest triggers I've come across. Now, obviously, you can fire this as double action. If I take the safety catch off, you fire it double action. Now, as you can see, the mechanism here is a little bit clunky. Obviously, as you're pulling it around, you're moving the cylinder, indexing it into place, and then releasing the hammer forward. Now, you can fire it single action, which I have to say is incredibly crisp, because obviously, rather than trying to move all the action round, the cocking of the hammer is doing this, and then obviously the pull of the trigger is just firing off the action. As I said a second ago, it really is a smooth trigger. I was quite surprised. Often revolvers for me, you know, they're a love-hate thing, but I find they can be a little bit clunky, and I just really don't get on with them. So that was quite nice to see. Now, loading the CO2 into this revolver is also quite a painless thing to do as well. Now, a lot of revolvers, obviously, and a lot of pistols, it's all held in a grip, and the Webley is no different. On the bottom here, it's probably not going to come out overly too well, but you've got a little indent here. Just get your finger in underneath and then take off the grip like so. And as you can see, you can just drop a 12 gram cartridge in with absolutely no fuss or pain at all. So fit in quite snugly. Obviously you've just got to undo the screw on the bottom and then the cartridge is in. And then when you're done, it's simply a case of just unscrewing it and then just tipping the cartridge out. Now that's something that I assume in a lot of my videos people understand, but I do get asked on quite a regular basis how to load. So for anybody unsure, that's exactly how you do it. Now when you're putting the grip back on, it's quite important just to make sure that there's a little tab just in the top here and that fits in that groove. So just get the tab in place like so, line it up and then just give it a squeeze and it all clicks back together with quite a positive click. I wouldn't recommend trying to put it in bottom first, obviously, because the tab's not going to be in its place and you risk snapping it off. It's still pretty sturdy, but you know, it's just one of those things, I wouldn't risk it. But apart from that, it's all pretty bomb-proof. Now the grips, as I said earlier, are the only plastic parts. Everything else is full metal. So when you're holding it in your hand, it's definitely got a weight to it. Now this is definitely one for the traditionalists, or maybe people that just want something a little bit different. I don't collect older guns by any means, but when this came out, it was just a fresh air really. And it just wasn't a copy of another Dan Wesson or a TR, whatever they're called, you know, the Umarex ones that all look the same and all in different calibers, but they've got a slightly different name. So you end up having to buy loads, you know, if you're into that kind of thing. On that note, they used the original blueprints when creating this, so this is as close to an actual Webley revolver as you're probably going to get. Now, one thing that the rep very kindly pointed out to me when I was actually having a look at the prototype version of this was the fact that they've changed the air valve. Now on the Dan Wessons, the frame had to be extended out because they just used a straight air valve. Obviously the hammer has to hit that to regulate the air into the shells, pushing the BB out. On this one, they rotated it 90 degrees, so they've managed to keep this really iconic curve along the back of the frame. So the air valve comes down through here. Now it's that kind of ingenuity really that just kind of sets this revolver out from the rest. And I have to say, you know, I've had this gun now for a couple of weeks, just trying to get a feel for it before I did the review, and I have to say I've been nothing but impressed with it. The build quality is second to none. There's no rubbing between here. I was quite worried at first with the metal lever and obviously the metal frame with the finish that there'd be sort of excessive rubbing and I get a mark across here, quite similar to what you get with magazines when you're taking them in and out of a semi-automatic pistol. But to so far there's been absolutely no issues at all. The only downside for me really is the price. It's certainly quite an expensive gun, but I have to say it's worth every single penny. If it's one of those things where you're looking at it and you're thinking, yeah, it's lovely, but it's a lot of money, I definitely recommend just saving up a little bit longer or putting off another gun to buy one of these. They really are just something else. And as I said earlier on in the view, there isn't another gun like it on the market at the moment anyway. Now this is only a BB version. As I'm sure the clever people out there, when the Dan Wessons first came out, they modified the shells to fire pellets. I'm sure it's exactly the same system. You might be able to do that with this one. But to date, this is just a BB one firing 4.5mm ball bearings. I'm sure there will be a pellet version going out. The rep didn't say no, but at the same time, he didn't say yes either. So it's kind of in limbo. But I wouldn't be surprised if one comes out at a later point. But until then, just the BBs. Now, overall, I think really this has just been something else. It's been one of the nicest guns I've reviewed in quite a while anyway. You know, I see quite a few guns come in and 9 times out of 10 I just send them straight back out again, or you know, sell them on, whatever, because I just don't get on with them. However, this one here is sure to be one to stay in the collection. As quite frankly, I'm not into the older revolvers, but this, yeah, it's amazing. It's been absolutely spot on. Now, I will do a follow-up video of this at some point, let you know how we've got on with it and bits and pieces like that. But until then, if you want to find any more information, feel free to pop over to our Facebook page. I've got some pictures of the prototype when we were down. I've also got some nice close-up pictures of this one as well for anybody that's interested. And, you know, we also post some other bits and pieces up. I've just managed to get hold of a Tracer Stingray lamp for my day state, so we'll definitely be doing a late night shoot and hopefully have a follow-up video of that in the coming weeks. So if you like what you're seeing, feel free to check over there. If you want to carry on following the YouTube channel as well, feel free to subscribe. We get a video up at least once a week. We try to get them sort of every Friday to come out about sort of 8 o'clock in the morning or so. Sometimes we're a day either way, but it depends what our internet connection's like, because here on the edge of the moors it's not overly great. So anyway, all that's left to really say is thank you for watching another one of our videos. If you've got any questions, feel free to put them in the questions box below. And if you've liked what you've seen, feel free to give it a like as well. Thank you very much.